How's it going, my jungle friends? My Patreon jungle friends. If you're watching this or listening to this, you're a Patreon member and I love you. So let's just get that out of the way. Hope everyone's had a great week. If you hear that cracking, that's my chair breaking under my enormous mass. It likes to click around a lot, and sometimes it scares the shit out of me. It'll be like, oh fuck. But it's not going to collapse, I don't think. Although my last chair did. Oh. Um, so we had a public holiday on Monday. So everyone had the day off. People that, suckers that go to work. So it feels like a Wednesday, but it's actually a Thursday. Which is great because it means the weekend starts tomorrow for me, and it means I can shove a lot of junk food into my mouth because weekends are when I eat an obscene amount of junk food. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm downloading illegally the Minecraft movie. Old Pirate Bay. So today's episode is going to be about the dodo. It's a bird that everybody's heard of. Everybody knows kind of what a dodo is, but not really what a dodo is, if you know what I mean. Everyone's like, you dodo. I don't know. Do people call people dodo? They do. They call people dodo. Dumb as a dodo. I think that's a thing. Because people just assume dodos are dumb because they're extinct. Right? I guess. They see them as these big, fat, slow-moving things. A lot of people actually don't know that dodos were a real thing. I don't think people have really stopped to think about a dodo. And I betcha most people don't know where the dodo was found. But you will after listening to this. So this episode is going to be about the fascinating dodo. Alright. So the dodo was endemic. And endemic means it was only found in this one specific area. It was endemic to the island of Mauritius. Now Mauritius is sort of east off Madagascar. And it's not a very big island. But the Dutch sailors used to stop on Mauritius Island to resupply and, do maintenance to their ships and things like that. And that's when they first encountered a large flightless bird that lived on that island, which is what we know today as the dodo. So it was first described in Western science in 1598. The Dutch people were like, hey, there's a big, plump, juicy bird living on this island. And yes, they did occasionally, actually not occasionally, more than occasionally, they would hunt and eat the dodo. Which, can you blame them really? They had no real concept of, hey, this is a small island. If we keep hunting these birds, they're going to end up non-existent. Which, of course, they eventually did. So in 1598 was when it was first sighted and first sort of came into the consciousness of Western science. And by 1662, it was wiped off the face of the earth. It was extinct. So in less than 100 years, well, significantly less than 100 years, the dodo went from being first discovered to extinct. And that's why dodos are kind of used as a mascot for extinction. Because I've got a dog hair up my nose. Dog hair. See, I just pulled that out and it felt like it was tugging from my brain. So it's kind of used as a mascot for extinction because that's a shameful act. I mean, come on. less than 100 years after being discovered, it's now extinct because of people. Them Dutch. No, it's not only the Dutch. Um, Lots of races are responsible for extinction, I'll tell you that now. But what did the dodo look like? Yes, it was a large, plump, flightless bird, but nobody really knows exactly what color it was, for example. That's a big one. Um, we do know from fossil remains or subfossil remains and a few preserved specimens roughly how big it was. It stood about 75 centimeters tall, so like 2.5 feet, and it probably weighed about 17.5 kilos at its maximum, which is like nearly 40 pounds. So it's a decent sized bird. But we only really know what color it was from super old paintings of it. People used to collect them and take them back to Europe and things like that for their menageries. Um, and obviously, photos didn't exist at that time yet. So you would occasionally see one in a painting. Now, the thing with oil paintings is, over time, the colors change. So you get a painting from the 17th century, it's going to look significantly different to how it was originally, like when it was fresh, because the colors fade, sunlight hits it, changes it, things like that. So we don't really have a accurate depiction of what color it was, which is, it's a shame. So we can only guess, and I mean, most depictions are it's like a greyish colour with bits of white on it and dark patches on its wings, which is probably true. Like if you look at a dirty pigeon colour, maybe that colour would probably accurately describe it. Now, the behaviour, obviously, no biologist ever studied wild dodos, but there are some letters, one in particularly that was written in 1631 and went missing for ages. And then in 2017, it was rediscovered. And it's this weird, it's almost like this Dutch sailor is ripping on rich people, or like capitalism, but using dodos as kind of a metaphor for rich people. So he's talking about how fat they are and how when they're, defending themselves, they open their beaks, flap their beaks around, which is kind of cool because it does give us a look into the dodo's behavior. So when it was threatened, it would use its beak, like apparently capitalists do. I guess they talk, maybe. I don't know. They also employ people and put roofs over people's heads. Anyway, he also mentioned stuff about dodos eating fallen fruit, eating nuts, eating bulbs. So that's another look into what the dodo perhaps ate. And looking at the structure of the dodo's beak, yeah, it probably did. That beak is built for crushing nuts and pecking at shit. But also, looking at the dodo's closest living relative, actually not still living, it was the what was it, the Andaman solitaire, which is another large flightless bird that's also extinct, but it was related to the dodos, and we do know that the solitaire did in fact eat shellfish off the beach, which maybe the dodo did as well. And looking at the dodo's beak, it probably would have been suited to crushing shellfish as well. If it can crush a nut, it can crush a clam. That's the rule that I just made up. But yeah, there's a weird myth as well surrounding the dodo, which I think is really cool. I think it's really cool. So, an early painting, actually, what's this guy's name? Let's have a look. So there's a painting by a guy called Peter Withoos, or something, and it's a 17th century painting. And if you look at this thing, there's like a lot of animals in this painting, and it was depicting the Reunion Island, which is a different island. It's kind of close to Mauritius. So it's depicting all animals in this part of the island or whatever. And in the background, you can see a dodo, which is unusual because dodos have never been recorded on the Reunion Islands. And also, the dodo is painted white. It's a white dodo. So this whole myth came up about a potential white dodo living on the Reunion Islands. Never been proven, but it is kind of strange that this painting is depicting fauna of the Reunion Islands, and not only is there a dodo in this painting, but it's white. So is this a weird color morph of the same species that is found in Reunion, or is this another species of dodo? Nobody knows, but there are some suspicions that this guy kind of fucked up. Apparently, maybe somebody told him about the Reunion ibis, which some numbnuts told him was kind of fat and plump. So I don't know if he just tried to paint a Reunion ibis based on some dude's description that he told him and ended up looking like a dodo, a white dodo. I don't think so, because in that painting there is an actual painting of an ibis kind of near the white dodo. And also, they think that Peter Withu's painting from the 17th century was actually inspired by a couple of earlier paintings of dodos that also portrayed white dodos on the Reunion Islands. So we don't really know. But I think that's pretty cool that there's this like weird cryptozoological myth of this weird white dodo that lives on the Reunion Islands. That's pretty cool. But as far as we know scientifically, dodos were only found on Mauritius Island. So we'll just go by that. But it's still an interesting story. Now, what exactly caused the dodo to go extinct? We know that Dutch sailors used to hunt them. But apparently, looking at, statistics and things like this, there was only ever less than like 50 people on Mauritius at any given time. And that's like the maximum. And apparently that wasn't quite enough to wipe out an entire population of bird living on Mauritius. So what else could cause their extinction? Well, like we know from all over the world, when people come to new places on ships and things like that, they bring a lot of other animals with them. It happens everywhere. It's happened, any country that has Rattus rattus, which is, I'm pretty sure it's like the Norwegian black rat, brought that rat to that country. And rats are found on every continent on Earth, pretty much except Antarctica. Although there's probably a few scuttling around in their camps, like inside, keeping warm behind the fridge. Who knows? Maybe there's not so many in the North Pole, but I'm sure if there's settlements and if people can survive, rats can survive. And then some. So anywhere where there's non-native rats means that a human brought it there. And this is the tale as old as time. Look at Australia. We've got foxes, we got camels, we got rats, we got donkeys, we got cats, we got cane toads. People brought them here. Whether on purpose or by accident, they were brought here. So on Mauritius Island, they had feral goats, they had feral pigs. They also have a population of long-tailed macaque, which is not native to Mauritius Island. Macaques weren't brought there for food, like the pigs and goats, so they'll bring pigs and goats over a lot of times they'll just release them so they could breed and then they could hunt them again next time they came. But not monkeys. They didn't really eat the monkeys. They were probably stowaways. So when their ships rock up, there might have been a monkey or two hanging around, got off onto the island, bred, and now there's the population of long-tailed macaque is still on Mauritius Island. So when you bring animals like that, they don't directly hunt the dodo bird. The dodo bird was big, it could defend itself, but they did not hunt, the eggs. I mean, eggs don't really run away from you, so I guess you don't really need to hunt them. Or do you? But they would eat the eggs. Animals like pigs and goats would also trash the nesting sites of the dodos. Dodos would have been ground nesters, so their nests would have been on the floor, maybe tucked away somewhere in some shrubs or something like that, but still, pigs just trample everything. Goats eat they're more browsers and things like that, but they will absolutely trample nests of dodos. The monkeys would seek out these nests and eat the eggs. We know monkeys will eat birds' eggs. And a decent sized dodo egg, you're talking probably, quite a bit bigger than a duck egg probably. There's a lot of food in there. So monkeys would absolutely love them. Just crack the top off and shoot it down. And I'm sure they ate the chicks as well. I wouldn't see a macaque passing up a dodo chick meal. So, yes, humans didn't wipe out the dodo by eating them, but they still wiped out the dodo by introducing a whole bunch of other crap onto that island that did. And that's not to mention the significant deforestation that went on Mauritius Island. They would set up little settlements and things like that. They would clear land, they would clear logs, they would clear trees, they would use them for their ships, they would use them for a whole bunch of stuff. So you get rid of those nesting sites, like the habitat for the dodo. You introduce a whole bunch of animals that trash the nests, and yeah, you take a few to eat. That's the perfect storm for an extinction. And we know that islands especially are so vulnerable to extinction because they don't have another chance to populate anywhere else. Some animals can move on and populate other parts of that land, but on an island, they can't go anywhere. So it was just a recipe for extinction. And that is the ultimate story of demise for the poor dodo bird. And, I resent the fact that dodos are seen as big, dumb, fat animals because, in actual fact, looking at the remains of dodos, and their leg bones were quite thick, it suggests that they had quite muscular legs, so they were quite fast moving. Yeah, they were big, they were bulky, they couldn't fly, but they could run, and they were quite quick. They also looked at their wings and noticed that they weren't just vestigial wings. Vestigial wings would mean that they have absolutely no use. They may as well not even be there, similar to an emu. Ostriches' wings aren't necessarily vestigial because they do use them for displays to attract mates and also to defend themselves, which is what they thought the dodo did. So the dodo did have wings, couldn't fly, but still used them. It still had a use, unlike emus, which are native to Australia, which their wings don't do anything. They're like nubs. You wouldn't even know they had them. So that's quite interesting. Now, there is still a relative of the dodo still alive today, and it's called the Nicobar pigeon. So dodo's closest living relative were the part of the pigeon family. Now, the Nicobar pigeon is found in Nicobar Islands, the Andaman Islands, India, Indonesia, and it doesn't look like a dodo. It's actually a super beautiful looking bird. It's a real colourful pigeon. But that is the closest living relative of the dodo. The dodo wasn't quite that colourful. In fact, the one on on Reunion Island didn't have any colour at all. It was white, apparently. Apparently. So next time, you hear something about a dodo and it's being talked about in a negative manner, just know that the dodo didn't go extinct because it was big and dumb. It went extinct because it just didn't stand a chance. No animal, no matter what it was, would stand a chance against that shitstorm of people and invasive animals and cutting down their home. No animal would survive that shitstorm. So, you can't blame the dodo for going extinct. And that's just a testament to, people not knowing about it. Back then, people didn't even know animals could go extinct. It wasn't even like in their mind at all. It wasn't a thing. It was like, oh, it's just an animal here. It obviously lives somewhere else. But being endemic means it's only found there. But not only that, only found on an island. Like Rottnest Island, just off Perth here, which I was actually there last weekend. Really cool. But you might have seen like the quokka selfies. They're the happiest animal on the planet. People getting selfies with them. They're like a small brown kangaroo. They're only about like the size of a football. They're adorable. But they are right now, there are a couple of little populations on mainland Australia here, but they're kind of kept hush-hush because they don't want people disturbing them. But Rottnest Island is really sort of, as far as the public knows, the only place you can see quokkas. And to be honest, it kind of is the only place you can see quokkas because you'll just never find them on the mainland. But if an animal like cats or another invasive animal came onto that island, Rottnest Island, those quokkas would be gone. Wiped out. Even animals even rats to a certain degree could mess them up. They could spread disease and things like that and wipe out that population. So islands are very fragile, especially when they're harboring one of the only populations of a particular animal on that island. You got to really look after it. If something happened like a bushfire on that island, that's like 90% of the quokka population gone. So, yeah, I guess the dodo just didn't stand a chance, especially with them Dutch smoking a pancake, smoking a dodo. So that is the history of dodos. I hope you learned something. I did. When I was like, a few years ago, I was like, because every now and again I'll be like, I want to read up about an animal. In fact, I do it every day. I'll be like, yeah, I want to know more about that animal. I want to know more about this. I want to know more about that. And I remember looking into the dodo and I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting. I just thought they were eaten to death. But, and also, I didn't think we knew so little about what the dodo looked like. We've got the preserved remains. We've even got a head of a dodo that still has soft tissue on it. So it still has, like, flesh on it, almost. And it's big, man. It's like a foot long. It's a big head. But still not enough to know what colour it was because there's no preserved feathers. Feathers, even after a while, depending on how they were preserved, will lose pigment. So, yeah, it's pretty fascinating that, it wasn't that long ago that dodos existed, talking time frame wise, yet we know almost nothing about what it really looked like. And some depictions in the painting show like these big fat, it's like a ball with legs and a beak, and they reckon that's more of like a caricature of the dodo, when in fact it wasn't as fat as that. It was kind of a little bit more slender, but still a big stocky bird. Anyway, that's my dodo episode, and as you can see, I'm wearing a new Thorns Jungle t-shirt. This came yesterday. It's fucking sick, hey? It's cool. It's like a faded black, and yeah, I dig it. Probably could have gone a size up, but hey, whatever. Anyway, have a great rest of your week and an awesome weekend, and I will see you next time on Thorns Jungle. Take care, everyone.